Hello everybody and welcome to another episode. My name is Gideon Bushgate-Krokamp and I am a creatively fit coach, and currently I have just started with a new series where we look at the power of composition as our weekly prompt. So I have showed you guys last week how I created my own art journal using recycled paper. So if you want to see how to make your own concertina kind of art journal, check out last week's episode because that's all the rage. This week, however, I'm very excited. We will be doing our very first installation in our new art journal, and we're going to be looking at composition. Yes, I know that you've attended many art classes and there's been a lot said about composition, or maybe you're like me, a self-taught artist, and I continually like to explore and to develop my skills as an artist, right? So even if you are an expert, even if you're a novice, I invite you to join me on this journey as we look at composition in our art journal. And this week, I have put together a little graph like this for myself to look at the variety of composition that is available. And this week, we are going to be looking at cross form. This is going to be my main prompt for the week, and I also share with you guys a little thing that I'm starting to develop for myself. It's a little prompt jar. I've used some of my excess cardboards that I've made, and I've made myself a little bit of a prompt jar. So I'm going to be pulling some prompts out of that jar as well to help influence how I apply this form of composition in my art journal. So give me 2 seconds, I'll turn the camera around and let's dive right into it. Right, good afternoon everybody. This is exciting. I cannot wait to get into my new creative art journal and to begin our fantastic new focus and series on the art of composition. So I've got this board in my studio and I love working from this. I derived this or got this from a class that I did online that dealt with composition a little bit, and it is my personal reference material that I created for myself when I need inspiration as I'm starting a new piece. So one of the things about composition that I would like to mention is, before you start with any of your creative projects, it is a good idea to have a reference chart like this, or at least some knowledge about composition before you begin. Because I really think that creative expression and your creative practice, and also then the actual art piece that you are hoping to create, will flow a lot better if you already have sort of an idea of where you are going to be heading with what you have. Obviously, another way to begin is just to break in your canvas, throw color at it, throw texture at it, and play with those things until you feel satisfied, and then to see what type of composition out of the list would best complement what you've already created. So there's definitely those two ways to approach an art form. I really do think it is rather difficult if you've worked very hard on a particular artwork and you've been loving what you've been creating on your canvas, but there is no sense or rhyme out of it. The longer you work on an art piece, the harder it is to sort of force it into a very particular composition at a later stage, which would mean that you might sacrifice something beautiful on your canvas for the sake of making it work. So that's why I say it's a good place to sort of start with your composition, and then to go into your design principles and those kind of things to make it work for you. So I'm really excited to get into composition for myself first and foremost, and then with you guys as well. So we are going to be dealing with all 16 of these compositional tools or directives, and these ones have been proven to work over time. It is used by all kinds of artists all over the world. It doesn't matter whether you are painting a portrait or a landscape or abstract, or if like me you are just going to be playing in your art journal. So our very first composition that we are going to be looking at in my art journal today is a cross form. Now, a cross form can be done in a few different ways. What you want to have is you want a vertical line and you want a horizontal line, and you want the focus of your composition to sort of sit where these two lines converge. Now you can do it in that corner, this corner, or that corner. It really doesn't matter. So you can keep shifting it to where you want that focus to be. So this is one of the easier kind of compositions, and I think that is a great place to start because you know, we want to get into it, and we'll leave some of the more complicated busy ones for later. So let's start today with this cross form, and I think that's going to be fun. So I just want to sort of introduce you guys to what I'm doing in my studio, and hopefully it will inspire you as well. So I'm just bringing my collage box over. Sorry, I dropped my glue here on the back. There we go. So I've sort of cleaned up my studio a little bit, and I've had a lot of papers in my box, but with color schemes that I wasn't too crazy about. So what I've been doing with my excess material is I've been sort of doing up a clean up project where I use ordinary office paper to stick some of the collage papers that's lying around, and then I will either work with a color study, like this one is a complementary color study between red and green, and I will just fill this little strip with collage papers, and then that becomes, you know, a lot easier to store than papers like this lying all over the show. And when you want to work with it, it takes hours to dig through a box to find something that could possibly work for you. So I find little strips like this is a great way to use your time pockets that arrive in your life. We recently spoke this week about using pockets of time, and what I mean with that is, you know, I'm a hairstylist, and I work on appointments, and sometimes, you know, it just works out that way that I have a day that I don't have any bookings, and because I'm self-employed, those are the times that I come to my studio. Or, you know, things happen, life changes, and there's maybe a cancellation, and suddenly I have an afternoon open. And that's exactly what I then use to come to my studio and work on little projects like this, so that when I have a recording day like today, or I've got a specific studio day, I have everything at hand, and it's organized, and it's easier for me to find what I am looking for. So these are all of my new papers that I've been creating. Some of you might have seen some of these papers on my Instagram or on my TikTok channel. And then I also have envelopes, and I actually need to get more of these envelopes as well, just to organize my life. So I've got a variety of papers here, but these last two, I really start to sort of focus it down to medium-sized scraps papers, and I've got small size scrap papers. And I keep these because these are interesting little elements that sometimes brings the whole design together. So this is on my right hand side, ready to roll as we get into our art journal. Now, you might wonder what these little hamster hands are doing on my page, but I did want to share this with you as well. Going forward, I've created these cute little hamster hands. I'm busy making greeting cards and things for my upcoming show in September, and I've got a lot of them, and I've created these from these little strips that I just mentioned. I use a little hamster hand key ring that I've got to trace the shape. I really just love this hand shape, and then I cut them out, and then I sit with these cute little cards that I can use for whatever, putting them on greeting cards. The list is endless, but anyway, so to make my life a little bit easier on this journey in my art journal, sometimes you run out of ideas, right? So what I've done is I have created a prompt list for myself, and I've added a prompt guide on the back of my hamster hands. This is experimental for me. I'll still make this more beautiful as I go. I don't have the nicest handwriting, but I didn't have the patience for calligraphy, and I don't have a stamp machine. Yeah, excuses are endless, but anyway, I just decided to write on there, and you will see that I have used the back for a variety of things like variety, the color blue, circles, and so forth. So there's about 40 prompts in this little box of mine, more colors, more shapes, and so forth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull a number of these little prompt guides from my little box over there, just to get started and to sort of get a direction. Or when we run into sort of a creative jam, then we can always go to our prompts for a spark of idea and to try something new and to see what will be born from that. So the 3 little cards that I drew today will be my guiding light. Texture. Okay, so one of the things I can do today is to look towards papers of ways to create texture on my page. That will be one of my guiding lights. And this one, add repetition, like a pattern. Okay, so we'll look for something with repeating patterns that we can use. And let's look at another one. Go darker, black or shadow. So that I like to keep them open-ended so that it's not so specific that we don't know where to go. So we'll be playing with some darker colors in today's composition and see how that can guide us. So like I said before, last week I showed you how I created this handmade recycled paper concertina journal, and today we are starting on page 1, and our first composition is going to be cross form. Okay, so a cross form, like I said, can be focused in one of the corners of your page. So without any further ado, I've got my acrylic gloss medium here, and I've got my glue stick. I'm still deciding. We're going to see this whole thing as an experiment, right? So we will see how this comes together. I'm concerned about these folds, but also not too much. I'm not going to make these collage exercises too thick and too complicated. I really want to keep it simple, and I want to communicate the form of each composition as clearly as possible. Right. So I'm digging here in my box, and I've got a number of pages out that I feel will contribute and help me to create a cross-form composition using black or shadow, darker colors, repetition of pattern. So this would be like a very good example of repetition of pattern, and of course texture. And all of these pages will give us texture. But look at this page, it has beautiful texture on it, and I'm sticking to a color scheme that is complementary. You will see This is also a type of pattern that's repeating, another repeating pattern, and this is literally one of those pages we created a few weeks back. So I will look for the link of this particular video, but just see how I created these tissue papers, staining my own tissue papers. And then I've got this jelly print that really has amazing texture on it right here. I hope you guys can see. And I love the way the paint has created all of these interesting marks, and I also drew in the wet paint, creating some semantic writing. So I think this piece will be a great starting point. I also created this page yesterday. That was fun, just while watching television, and I just used a variety of line. This is actually so beautiful, I almost don't want to tear it, so we'll see. And this was just another strip page that I created, but I'm not interested in that one today. We're going to be playing with these pages, so I think a great starting point for our collage today is going to be with this texture piece. And I just want to sort of quickly just use, let's just use a pencil. This is visible. No, that's not dark enough. Let me just quickly do a line of some sorts. Where is my bigger cookie? Okay, I've left it in another place. So let me use my oil pastel. Okay, so we want to sort of use a composition like this. So we want a piece of this to come down the bottom and to cross over. So we need a point where there will be a crossing over of these two opposing lines. So we've got a vertical line and we've got a horizontal line, and where the two converge, that is where the focus, the emphasis, the most interesting part must be here. X marks the spot, right? So if I'm going to be using this page as a start off point, so we're going to have this negative space happening at the top left, where it's going to be quiet, it's going to be still, it's going to give us breathing space. So these two lines draw the viewer in to focus on whatever interest we're going to create here, and again it leads the viewer's eye out, hopefully up, come to the quiet place, come to the horizon line, and come back to the interest point. So this is the interesting thing about composition. It really has been proven time and time again that this kind of form helps the viewer to remain engaged in your artwork. They keep looking at it because the lines, the textures, the shapes, and the way that you've composed it all together on your canvas or your page keeps the viewer interested, engaged, and active in your artwork, so that we don't move on. And so if you've thought for a second that composition is not really that important, you know what, I think it can be an amazing shift in your art. If you've never looked at it, to look at it with me and to try it out and to see which of these compositional forms is your favorite, and which helps you to communicate your art in a better way. So hopefully this will be very useful and meaningful to you. Hi everybody, if you're new to my channel, just hit that subscribe button and that notification bell, and hopefully you find this content useful, helpful, and inspirational. And if you do, hit the like button as well. You are welcome to ask me questions and I will answer them personally in the comment section. Thank you so much for engaging as we explore the world of composition together in our art journals. So I'm going to pause the video, and when I come back, I'm going to get into this cross form composition and I will do a voiceover for you guys explaining what I'm doing. So I'll speak to you just now. Right, so I'm going to prepare this page by using some acrylic paint. I am going to my cream and yellow ochre paint just to bring in a little bit of interest to this page. So there's an interesting thing I read here on Google talking about compositional techniques, and the first one that I want to just look at quickly is the rule of thirds. This helps us to divide our canvas into thirds, making sure that there's interest and focus in one of these areas where the lines cross each other. This also helps us to avoid placing our main focus right smack bang in the middle of a page, which is boring. The other one is rule of odds. To use a rule of odds suggests that an odd number of subjects in an image is far more interesting than an even number. That's interesting. Using your space in an interesting and in a wise way is also a sure way to win. Simplify your design, look at geometry and symmetry, create movement, and employ all of your techniques to focus on your composition. Right, so I have basically integrated this first bit of collage with a bit of paint. I felt that the page was too white, so let's continue. So using my inspiration or prompts here, go darker, texture, repetition of pattern. I keep looking at my papers and deciding what will go next. So I'm just going to continue to repeat these papers in some way, but I do want to keep this sort of as the main focus in some way. We'll still see, but for now I want to continue to add pattern. So looking between these two, I think a nice contrast will be something like this. So let's tear some of this. It's tissue paper, so maybe let's use a brush to wet a section, and I'm going to use my ruler. That might be an interesting piece. So I'm just going to wet this tissue because I know it is very thin, and if I wet it, then it just tears a little bit easier along the edge where I want it to tear. I quite like this rugged edge on the side. I think I must break this down a little bit on the end so that it's not so hard edged. Maybe here as well. Here we go. Now I must try to keep some kind of edge clean to help communicate this cross form. So I don't mind if I go over some of the bottom layers. It all adds to the interest in the end, so don't panic. You sometimes lose something that you've installed in your collage, but that's the same with painting. You know, you don't always have every single layer that you've painted shines through in the end. But this is the nature also of collage and of acrylic painting, really, is it is a build up of layers that creates visual interest, richness of color, and a body to your work that makes it look yummy and beautiful and interesting. And I'm working with my acrylic medium here because it really integrates all of these papers in a nice way. So let's continue. Let's look at maybe some variety down here. I quite like this pattern, so I just want to see if I tear some of it by covering some of it up. That looks interesting down there. So I think I'm going to tear this edge off so that we don't have such a hard edge down here. But I do need a longer strip of paper now to communicate this horizontal piece down here. Let me see. I want some of that to shine through. Okay, so the top's not that important, but I think it needs to be a broad enough piece so that when we place something on top of it, that there's still areas of it shining through. Okay, so we can take this edge off as well, so that we don't lose all of our circles there. And I also don't like this hard edge. Let's keep things interesting. Okay, that looks nice. Okay. Right, so I'm just going to work here on some scrap paper on this side so that I can apply my collage. Now, one of the tips I can give you, if you're working on a thicker piece of cardboard, before you apply your acrylic medium, just wet the paper because that already sort of saturates the paper so that it doesn't crinkle so much on you. So by the time you apply the medium, then the paper is already sort of relaxed and not so reactive to the moisture in the acrylic medium. There we go. So then that becomes a little bit of an easier job to get this piece of paper to lie down flat and not be so crinkly. Alrighty then, here we go. So then it feels like a piece of cloth. So it's just so much easier to get it down, and then you use whatever is on your brush just to give it a nice coat and to press it down, and any excess medium then oozes out at the bottom, and then we can just integrate this piece of paper a little bit better. So I'm keeping in mind this sort of edge on my concertina needs to be able to fold, so I'm just going to encourage that crease as well a little bit. There we go. But you know, it's all paper in the end, so I'm just going to put a piece of what do you call it, wax paper in here while the page cures. And you can also use a bit of a credit card. Just be mindful that the paper is thin, so you don't want to damage it in any way, so be very gentle. Alrighty, so we've got some movement and progress. So now that we've got a nice dark base, I think the next choice that I will make out of my papers is to choose something on the lighter side, and but I think we need a bit of color now, so we need to bring in some of that texture. I do like that very nicely. choices. Let me let this dry and then I'll be back, and then we'll decide what will go on top. Right, so this is dried, sort of, using my hair dryer a lot, but I did feel that my cross form is a bit low and a bit wide, but I do need some pieces to stick over. So I've got this little piece of the circles that I've got on this side, and I've decided to place it here just to bring that line out a little bit and to repeat this pattern somewhere else. And I've also used a little bit of this flower to, I want to place this piece here so that we have a bit of a line moving out. I feel that my horizontal line got a little bit lost. So I've prepared this page with a bit of water already. So let's go ahead and glue that down with acrylic medium. And then I'm going to allow this page to dry, and then when I come back to it just now, I am going to play a little bit with my oil pastels and just incorporate some of the pages and the shapes in the collage, and also just finish it off in some way where I feel it needs a little bit more attention and detail, and I think that is going to be very exciting. Right, that feels a lot better to me. Right, everybody, this is exciting. It is starting to come together for me, and I again went through my stash because I feel that the piece is coming together, but it needs a little bit more of a focal point, even though looking at it now, I had a good hour or two break from working on this page. I'm very happy with it as it is. It could really go through as the completed piece, but you know me, sometimes inspiration calls. What I did like about this is also just office paper that I used a variety of pens and just played with line and form. I quite like this shape on this page, so I thought I would make it part of this collage. So I'm gonna just cut this little bit out and see how much of it I need to trim away, or how much of this I can use without completely starting this page over. And I'm sort of cutting this page in the shape of our prompt today, which is to play with the compositional shape of cross form. That's exciting. So let's first see. Okay, so this line is different to that line, but it's covering too much up for me. So I am going to trim some of that away. Also not everything, because I do like the contrast of the thick black line and the thin lines on the edge. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, that's looking more interesting. Let me just see. Maybe, what would it look like if I remove some of the center? That could also be interesting. So I think I'm going to use my little what is this called? Blade cutter, craft blade cutter, and I'm just going to remove the center out of this block. I mean, why not, right? I can always stick it back in. I'm just cutting it out. There we go. I mean, I don't have to throw that away. I can use that as a little, this is now a good example of a small element that can go in my small bag if I don't end up using it on this piece, because I didn't want to lose this beautiful tissue paper underneath as well. So I'm trying to sort of balance this focal piece, or piece that's sort of crowning this whole exercise, and placing it in a way that I keep as much of the smaller pieces detail as possible, and at the same time looking at my composition, that I continue to work in this rule of cross form. That is what's going to make this whole composition work by itself. And I'm just wondering now, do I like the white detail in the middle or don't I? Do I like it or don't I like it? Can you help me, please? What do you guys think? I think I'm losing a little bit too much there, but is it worth losing it? I think I must put it a little bit to the side. That is such a beautiful shape. Let me just round this little corner up a little bit better. Let me fussy cut around this corner. Forgive me. And remove that first square. That. And now when I place it, yes, I like that. I can keep that. Choices, choices. Because I'm also looking now at what is left in the center, and this is placing so much emphasis on that I think I need something else here to make it work. So should I put this piece back? Actually, yes. It looks better to me with the centerpiece in there, because what is focused on inside is not that beautiful. This whole centerpiece is a little bit boring for me. So let me go to my small scrap bag, and I'm just going to dig in here for something spectacular that could possibly come and save the day. Let's see what we have here with these circles, just in case. That could work. There's too much pink on that. Let's look at the other ones. Blue, no, not really. That's too blue for me. Let's see what jumps out at me. That can maybe go underneath. That's a little bit more interesting, or that sort of brings the whole piece together. A piece of that could work. You see, and that's what I like to do. Then I go into my scrap bags and I find little pieces that is speaking to me. Even a piece of gold can look nice. I mean, and you can also go for a complementary color, you know, putting a little bit of blue in there will really bring emphasis to this piece. Here's another piece of gold bronze. Right, so I think we've come to the conclusion of this exercise, the very first one in my new art journal. And today we played with the compositional prompt of cross form. And like I explained in the beginning, you can apply this focus of this method in any of the corners. Just make sure that you keep thinking about crossing these two lines in order to create tension between vertical and horizontal. So this is dry. It still can sit for a few days to really cure. But I thought I'm going to just now integrate some of my layers by playing with my oil pastels. And I am inspired to just use it to soften some of these white glare lines in here and just integrate this little piece a little bit more. That looks nice to me. And I also wanted to play with a little bit of, you know, writing script kind of vibe. And I'm also wondering about bringing in a little bit of this yellow ochre down here and just integrate this a little bit better. Quite like that kind of vibe. And then we have to repeat it in a horizontal way as well. So let's try connecting those pieces just like that. Very softly, nothing too loud. I don't want to redesign. I just want to add. I want to bring detail. I want to finish off a little bit. So I'm going to put in a little bit of my yellow ochre over this white edge and just very gently blend it in a little bit so that it doesn't stand out so garishly. But I do like the contrast with the white that we used in the back. So I'm going to lose the white entirely. I quite like the contrast between the black and the white, and then the add-on of just a little bit of color. So when you add your final touches of color, it really is all about being complementary and using your complement color, in this case the blue, as little as possible, because you want it to be the exclamation mark. So I don't want to add a lot of blue all over the show, but I do want to just bring in a little bit of this, I don't know, semantic writing, something like that, to just bring a bit of drama to this page. So I'm going to go ahead and just follow my heart and just give expression to it in some kind of way. And I think we've nailed it. I'm just going to add a little dot there as well. Yes, I quite like it. I think that is more than enough. And I love how all of these elements that we played with today came together on this page. And for me, it all started with today's prompt, where we look at cross form as our compositional focus, and playing with a variety of self-made collage papers. And I also brought in my new prompt system, and I pulled these 3 prompts that's just giving me some focus for my work today. And it was go darker, use texture, and do repetition like a pattern. So I think there's a lot of visual texture, there's actual texture, the differences in the papers. It really adds to a lot of feeling, even the texture that is given with the oil pastel that's skipping over the page. And then to bring all of this together, we have straight lines, we have crooked lines, we have organic lines, we have shape, and there's also a contrast between the circles and the squares. So I really think this is coming together really very nicely, and I'm quite excited. This is my first page in my new journal, and this is going to be interesting when you page through this to see, you know, composition after composition after composition. And I think that will be the sort of coherent force in the end that's going to bring this homemade journal home for me. So I hope that you are inspired to play this week with this cross-form composition as the prompt. So whatever medium you're working in, think of ways that you can maybe try to experiment with this composition in your artwork and see where it leads you. So please take a photograph and share it with me on the Creative Heart on Facebook, and just add your name and tell us where you're from. And the prompt for this week is cross-form composition, and I'm looking forward to seeing those tags. You can also tag me, #GideonsLight, and that way I'll be able to see whatever you post on whatever platform you are, and I'll be able to track that. Thank you so much for watching.